Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin the service. If you have a cell phone or pager, if you could turn it to the silent mode.
Bizmor l'davar and Roy lo echsar, binos deshe yerbitzenu me menuchas in aleni, nafshi yeshoyvi v'yamchen b'mag v'etzerek l'man shemo, gam ke'elik b'geit salma b'sal ira araki ato yimadi, shiftecha mishantecha imi nachamuna etarch l'fon eshulchan neget zor aroi, Deshanta b'shem Roshi kosi rivayo, ach toy v'chesed yir defuni kol yemei chayai v'shafti v'vesa noy l'orach yomim. We're here to say goodbye to our dear friend from Kalman. We lost a friend, a unique, colorful personality, unique thinker, original thinker, and I had the schus of spending a lot of time with him, especially in his healthier years. As Chazal brought in Sifrei Kodesh that a mace hears divrei hesped, whatever you're saying about them, Coleman would not be happy because he came to many shiurim I gave over the years, and if the subject ever gravitated into Hilchos Avelos, he would say, "Stop that! Change the subject. Find something else to talk about." It was actually Simcha shared that Kalman did a pre-need for this funeral in 2012, and I was surprised because he really didn't like dealing with death at all. His sister-in-law, Mrs. Minkus, Betty, was similar. She always would shush me if the subject would move in that direction. One of the things that I think was unique about him, he was never politically correct. He was always sincere. What you saw is what you got. Brutally honest, and it was refreshing. In a world where it's an alma de shikra and everyone you deal with is up to some game. He was just always honest and straightforward. Our history goes back many decades because my father and him apparently were in classmates in the yeshiva at some point. And and he once told me my father was, which surprised me a little bit. He said my father was the best guy in the shir. Although his life took some detours, he always credited Rabbi Kropnik, who we always called Rav Asher, with bringing him back from the brink, both in Ruchnias and in Gashmias. He was very ill at one point, and Rabbi Kropnik literally, carried him on his shoulders till he was well and thriving. Like his brother Herbie Zechron Livracha, he was a big masmid. Once he found Gemara, he loved learning Gemara. I remember him sharing that he had made us. He used to sometimes come into my shir and say, "I need a few minutes. I want to make a siyum. I just finished the Masechta." And if I remember correctly, it was Messiah Mala Shas. I think he used Art Scroll, and I remember he was the last guy on planet Earth that liked Sensino Gemoras, maybe because from law school he understood all these Latin phrases that the rest of us couldn't read, but. He aspired to greatness. He wrote a number of books, and some I can't say I agreed with everything he wrote, but he was always thoughtful and profound. A few months ago, I think it was a few months ago, somebody called me from Boston that they were doing a study group with one of his books, because you can get the books on Amazon. They had a group in a shul that was doing a study group with one of Kalman's books, and he had asked me, "Do you know this guy, who he is?" So I said, "Yeah, we were pretty close." And the you know I he once came and one of the unique things about him, he used to go to Israel, and he would like camp out when he was there. He didn't stay in a hotel. He was loved nature, and he would once in a while. I remember he used to go to Mexico for a few days every year, and he was a big swimmer. So remember, I once had the bad fortune of swimming next to him at the JCC, and he, even though many years my senior, he did like 40 laps in what took me, and I did 5 in the same amount of time. But he used to go to Mexico, and I remember he once came back from Mexico, and he said, I noticed a strange thing when I was there. He said, they seem to be religious people in Mexico. They have a picture of the Virgin Guadalupe, some saint or what have you. And everywhere you go, in every store, and every vendor on the street. And he says, and it's also a very immoral country. He says, everywhere you go, there's znus. And he said it was like, struck him odd that just the stira shabo, what a contradiction. He said that how could they be religious and, ports rayas the way they are. So remember, we had a long conversation about this, and we came up with an answer. It was I think about a lot. He said, in he said, who are our heroes in Klal Yisrael? Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, and we aspire. We know we're never going to be Moshe Rabbeinu, but we aspire at least to move toward in that direction. He says, "Who's their hero? The Virgin." He says, "If you're a virgin, you're already a hero." He says, in other words, they set a very low bar. That's all you need to be a basula. You're showing already from the Chassidi Umas Olam, the highest echelon. Because, so he says, when you set a low bar, you end up with low results. And in Klal Yisrael, the Eibishter benched us with great people to look up to, and we aspire to much bigger things. So it's a conversation I think about a lot. And I'm not going to be married, but I once had this chus of seeing him in court. By the time I met him, he was mostly retired. He had kept up his license, but he wasn't really practicing anymore. And once, as a chesed, he took on a case of one of my clients at the Ark, and he had asked me to come to be a character witness if they needed one for the case. So, and I said, so I remember the judge calls the case, and I guess it doesn't look so good for his client, so Kalman says, Your Honor, the form form XYZ is not signed. So the judge tells the other side, says, yeah, fine, sign it. So Kalman says, McGillicuddy versus Johnson, 1961. So judge says, what? So, and he starts quoting case law about some case where you're not allowed to sign a document in court, whatever this particular document was. There was some Isser Chiram on doing such a thing. So the judge says, we do it 30 times a week. And then Kalman pulls a piece of paper out of his pocket. And remember, he unfolds this old yellow paper with coffee stains on it. And it's from a law book, and it's got yellow there, this law, and the judge couldn't believe it. and he said, and the judge had to give in and throw the case out in behalf of Kalman's client, because and he demanded that he follow this particular law that the judge never heard of. Remember, the judge was looking at the bailiff. He says, what's he talking about? And um, if I remember correctly, I drove Kalman home from the court, and he said, he said the judge was in shock. They never hear anybody talk about the law in a courtroom. He, he says, but I make sure I go in very well prepared, and he says I will not give up without a fight. And to his credit, in everything in his life, he really never gave up without a fight. These last few years, he really had rough riding, medically and otherwise. And the fact that he stuck it out this long was, I think, nothing short of miraculous. I want to be makar tov to, Reb Shoal and, Reb Kalman's family, and also Steve Siegel and Fega Chaim Maor and Rabbi Kropnik, for everything they did for Kalman. Really, it took a village, but, I think, everybody was very devoted to him, and, he has a lot of schosim. If he took any detours in life, all the yisurim he had for sure, or his mechaper any averas. So, as Hashem, he'll go straight into Gan Eden, and they should be Melis Yosher for all of his friends and all of us who loved him.
Thank you, my dear friend, Rabbi Tannenbaum, for the wonderful and fascinating and warm remarks about my dear Uncle Kalmi. That's what I always called him, and that's what my father called him, and that's how we're going to proceed. As I look back on my dear Uncle Kalmi's life, it started before his life. A Jew, a very old Jew, told me that he knew Kalman Minkus, the original. The original, he said he was a very important officer in the show, and that was who Kalmi was named after, fascinatingly enough, and indeed carried much of that a beautiful character with him. He had a strong family allegiance, as has been mentioned over here. I remember he told me that he was by my namesake's funeral. I'm Shol Yitzchak. That was Kalmi's Zaidi. And he says, yeah, I remember it clearly. It was 1944. He says, I was a little boy. You can work out the figures. He wasn't too old then. He said, they schlepped me to the funeral, and I was there. He was also, it kept with him in his life his wonderful lineage coming through my grandmother from Tiktin, very prominent and distinguished city near Vilna, and through my Zaidi from Bialystok, and he carried that with him. He was also, Kalmi was what we'd say in Hebrew, a guide for life. Now, I must share with you something fascinating. Despite my adventurous nature, and I love riding the bike and walking and doing all kind of fun things, I never wanted to ride a horse. I never wanted to ride a horse. And Kalmi says, it's good you don't want to ride a horse. He says, your father was around bar mitzvah year. He was on the horse. The horse threw him completely off. We thought he was dead. He wasn't. But I see, as they say, the father's deeds are an example for the son. So Kalmi was right on the money with that one. As has been mentioned by my dear friend Rabbi Tannenbaum, he was a brilliant man and author of many works. He loved sukkahs and sitting in the sukkah, and would share with us beautiful, sweet memories of Simchas Torah in Israel, just wonderful, captivating memories that stay with me as if I heard him just 5 minutes ago. As also has been mentioned, he was a great and deep thinker, and some of those ideas stay with me also till today. He took a lesson for all of us. He took very good care of himself, was a phenomenal swimmer. I think it was something in the West Side, because my father was also, a tremendous swimmer. It must have been with the YP, help me out over here. YP, you help me out of it. Everyone remember this? Jewish JPI. JPI. I think they spent a lot of time in the pool at JPI. And so he was a phenomenal swimmer. He used to go swimming in the lake and ride bike. And I think that helped to his longevity. At this time, I want to close with a thank you to everyone, both who are here and not here. Rabbi Krupnik is here, and everyone who's not here for being a wonderful friend and teacher, and getting this funeral together over here. Okay, it is my wish and prayer to Heid Nishmaso Tzura B'Tzura Chaim. His wonderful soul should be bound in the soul of the Creator Himself, and he should have, as we say in our family, a lichtike Gan Eden, a wonderful paradise of Gan Eden. Yes, I believe Rabbi Nathan is here, so I will cede the podium to Rabbi Nathan.
I knew Kalman a long time. We spent a lot of good times together. We learned Torah. We did mitzvahs. He introduced me to a desire to be close to the Rebbeinu Shalom that is unusual. You don't see this in the world in general. He was a man of incredible talent and insight and deep Rahmanas for people. Even though he was an extremely troubled soul person who went through a lot of tsaras in this world, he told me that he wasn't a wanted child. And he grew up with the stigma attached to a child like that, a certain arrested development that burned fiercely inside of him, and he tried to make amends with all those that had done him wrong. And it wasn't an easy path. He was a person of great stature. He helped a huge amount of people in great sorrows through his being a lawyer and just being kind to people. I recall that we went to the prison in Joliet to try to help a person who was in jail on a very serious charge. And this person had absolutely no remorse for what he had done. And yet, the law was affording him some kind of a reprieve. And we went there to try to help him. And I'm pretty sure that Kalman didn't get paid for this. But if there's anything that he really loved, it was the fact that every human being is created in the image of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he would spend a lot of effort to try to bring that out in every situation that he could possibly find to do. And if he would have had more time and more opportunity, he probably would have written more about this. But he felt that the greatness of the United States was in its justice system, and that every person is innocent until proven guilty, basically because everybody is created Jew and non-Jew alike. Every human being, Havdil, is created in the image of the Creator. And he tried to show that everything in American law was founded in Torah. And he spent a lot of time and effort on this. And he had Divrei Torah on Pirkei Avos, which he loved Pirkei Avos, and he would try to show, especially Rabbi Akiva, but he could quote you Pirkei Avos backwards and forwards. And we used to discuss a lot of times. And even though, not many people really interrelated with Kalman in his last years, where he came back to Chicago almost in a total pauper. He came back from Eretz Yisrael, and he had nothing but a suitcase full of books that he had written. And I don't know everything about what he had hidden in this place or that place, but I could tell you that he was a man who lived a simple life and tried to do the very best that he could for all human beings, especially for Jewish people. He would go to the ends of the earth to try to help somebody out, whether it was legal, whether it wasn't legal. He was a man that took the Torah to heart, and he would especially love to learn the Gemara and to imagine himself among the Hachaim, and he would live in the metaphor of being in the Gemara. He really lived in that. And so in the schus of all his good deeds, in the schus of all the Gemara that he learned, and all the Torah, and people that he helped, all the mitzvahs that he did, Hashem should, as I heard the last speaker saying, should find him for sure a leftige Gan Eden, and we should all be zoche to go to Eretz Yisrael alive, not only in this situation like going when a person is after there, 120 years. We should all be zoche to be as Mashiach Tzidkenu, and we should see Kalman and all the other tzaddikim when they stand up in Tchias HaMesim.
Kapitel Tezayin, Mechtam LeDavid. Mechtam LeDavid, Shomreini El Ki Chasisi Bach. Marti Lavinoy Adnoy Ata Toivasi Balecha. Doishim Asher Ba'aretz Hema Vadire Kochepti Vam. Here Vatzvoisam Achim Maharu. Balo Sich Niskayam Midam Bala Sa Eshmoisam Asvasai. Ninoy Manas Chelki Vikoisi Ata Tamich Barali Chavalim Nafluli V'Mim Af Nachlas Shofra Oloi Barech Es Adinoy Asher Yatzoni Af Leilos Yismuni Kil Yosai Shivi, Sandra, the Negdi, Somid, Kimi Mini, Bal Emod, Chain, Samach Libi, Yoga Kvodi, Af, Sari, Shtom, Vatach, Kilo, Tazob, Napshit, Inshallah, Sitin, Hasid, Hol, Eros, Shachas, Todiani, Ora, Chaim, Soipus Machos, as for Nachanimos, Bimho, Netzach.
This concludes the Levaya here. The funeral will take place, the Kfur will take place in Eretz Hachaim Cemetery Friday morning approximately at 11 o'clock. If we can rise as we escort Darn from the chapel. And once we've left the chapel, you may return to your cars.